So I'm going to start off maybe 5 or 10 minutes talking about my career path after I was part of the MoMA Show English Fellows, which was right before JET began. I'm going to introduce Kasia, and she is going to present on building a Japan-related career for 35 minutes. Then we're going to take a 20-minute break. Then she's going to present on networking for 35 minutes. And then we'll have about 25 minutes left at the end for Q&A. But if you have any questions, feel free just to put them in the chat. We're going to start a Google Doc so we don't forget about it and so that everybody will see the answers later. And so, yeah, that's what we'll do. So I'll start off with boring you with my life story. Hopefully it will be helpful. Because what I want to try to communicate is how valuable your experience is, whether or not you realize it now or not. Okay, so I'm going to kind of read most of this, but my name is Joe Palermo, and I was in Gunma Prefecture from 1982 to 1984. So it was a long time ago. My role way back then was to visit 50 middle schools every year, some 2 or 3 times. So it was pretty crazy. Talk about giving a lot of self-introductions. Yeah. I studied Japanese during my last 2 years in college, right before I moved to Japan. And when I was in Gunma, I was really determined to improve my Japanese skills. So for 2 years, I kind of became more Japanese than Japanese people. And I only made friends with people who had no interest in English. I read manga and books only in Japanese, and I would only watch TV in Japanese for 2 years till I almost went crazy at that point. When my JET MEF stint was complete, I had to decide what I wanted to do as a career path. So I wanted to stay in Japan at that point. So I felt my only options were either to teach English or to join a Japanese company. So I decided to join a small Japanese company that made temperature controllers for industry. And I was the only gaijin in the company. They were looking for an English-speaking Japanese person, but they got me instead. My major was education, so I was hired just based on my Japanese ability. So I had to learn the business end kind of on the job. I worked in their export department, and I was assigned to subsidiaries we had in other countries. And my job was to interface with our operations and engineering departments to answer all their questions and process their orders. I also translated brochures and operating manuals, which it wasn't that difficult because they were pretty repetitive. After doing that for 3 years, I realized advancement in that company was only on longevity and not ability. Pretty typical in a Japanese company. So I decided to try to join an American company locally, and that they would send me back to the US because I needed a lifeline back. I joined the Nielsen company in their market research division, where they analyzed data from everything sold in food and drugstores. And I was taught how to give presentations in Japanese, and I had several clients like, Purina, Bristol Myers, some Japanese clients. After doing that in Tokyo for 3 years, I had the opportunity to take some of our clients on a tour of the US. So we visited the Nielsen offices in New York, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And as part of the Chicago visit, I learned of a global group called Global Information Services that had just been formed. So I lobbied super hard and was hired by that group. That's how I managed to get back to the US. Ironically, the headquarters was about 45 minutes away from where I grew up. So my dad was like, hey, you had to go all the way to Japan to get a job that's 45 minutes away. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. That's how it works. So the job was putting together data across 80 plus countries and then selling global databases to major food and drug corporations. So here I was hired based on my experience living outside the US and understanding how one of the non-US countries collected and processed their data, and not necessarily on my Japanese language skills. So I worked in that global group for 20 years, and I ended up in several executive positions, like vice president of product development, vice president of sales, vice president of marketing, some others. I had a sales team in Japan reporting to me at one point. So I was in Japan a couple of times per year, and I did a lot of traveling in the US and also throughout Europe. So after Nielsen, I spent the last 7 years of my career working for a competitor of theirs, helping them to establish a global presence. So throughout my career, most of the roles I had were created for me, and they weren't pre-existing roles. my experience living and working in Japan for 8 years was always a helpful factor, and that really helped me stand out from other people. And so that's why, your experience living in another country is huge. Some career examples of my friends that were in the program way back when, also in JET. One person came back and went to law school. Coincidentally, he ended up in the corporate law department at Nielsen, so we reconnected there in the same office. One woman who was with me in Gunma, she joined the Foreign Service, and she spent her whole career working for the government. She just retired a couple of years ago. Another friend in Tochigi, he worked for Sanrio, Hello Kitty, in Japan, and he went on to become the CEO of another licensing company. So that's really my point is, your experience, regardless of your Japanese ability, is more valuable than you probably realize it. So, leverage it as best you can. And that's what Kasia is going to kind of talk about today. If you're looking to get into business at all, you can use me as a resource. I have over 1,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I probably have some connections at any target companies that you might have. Okay, so feel free to ask me any questions in the chat or after the presentation. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce Kasia, and I'm going to read hers because it's very impressive. Kasia Lynch, she spent 8 years in Japan also. She speaks 3 languages. She was there for high school, college, graduate school, and her professional career. She earned her bachelor's from Boston University and her master's from Tokyo's Ochanomizu University. Her career utilizing Japanese language and cultural skills began in 2003 with concert promotion, and later moved to interpreting and translating electronics and also the automotive industry. She was able to do that while living in Japan, Poland, Italy, and the US. Since starting her company, Ikigai Connections, in 2018, Kasia has been featured in various Japan-related podcasts, websites, and webinars, including the US-Japan Bridging Foundation, working with us at US JETAA, Laurasian Institution, and BFF Tokyo. Her goal is for nihongojobs.com to become the go-to board for all Japanese jobs in the US. So that's a mouthful, Kasia, but now I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks, you guys, for listening.
Thank you very much, Joe, for sharing your story. And I'll actually get back to one of the comments you mentioned about how these jobs were created for you. I think I tend to hear that quite often with people who have language, cultural skills, overseas experience. But yes, so my name is Kasia. Before I get started with my presentation, thank you for the emojis. I wanted to ask everybody in the chat, if you could just let me know. I want to ask you just 2 quick questions to help me point out some of the things in my slides. So the first question is, are you considering, and whether you are looking to change a job or you're looking for a job or you're fine where you are at right now, I just want to know your next 5-10 year goals. Are you looking for US based, Japan based, or another country? Just so I can help guide my slides. If everybody's going to be just staying in the US for a while, then I'll make sure my slides are based on that. So if you can let me know in the chat, US based, that will help me. Awesome. Canada too. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. Very good. Pay back some loans, then Japan. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you very much. So my next question, if I have a few more people answering, my next question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important to you is it to use your Japanese language skills, regardless of your level, whether it's 0 basic or really advanced? 1 is not important and 5 is super important. Super important. Okay. Again, regardless of your level. 3 to 5. Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. Great. And I'm not asking about your cultural skills for now, because I think that just by already being on the JET program, living overseas, you've already got a lot of experience. You can use that regardless. Even if it's not your super dream, it's something that's going to make you very appealing, I believe, to any kind of role. So let me share my slides now. All right. Let me know if you can see. I think everything is okay. Very good. All right, let me get started about post-JET careers. Now what? I know that a lot of times, now I did not do JET, I did the MEXT scholarship, but I am a huge fan of the JET program. In fact, I'm very active in our local Great Lakes JET Alumni Association here, and a huge fan of everything that everybody has gone through, regardless of how many years you were over on the JET program, even if it was as short as 1 year and you came home for whatever reason. I know that you have a lot of reverse culture shock. Here you are spending so much time overseas. You're learning all this new stuff and you come back and it's just like, it kind of messes with your emotions. It messes with a lot of your everything. So I understand that feeling. So today we'll go through 4 major career paths just to give you an idea. This is for the first half, just 4 main career paths. And then afterwards, I'll talk about networking. So I try to limit my speed because I get really excited about this topic. So I'm going to try to monitor myself. If I get too excited, I'll try to calm myself down. But if you're okay with full speed ahead, I shall do that too. All right. So we'll talk about 4 main career paths of business, translation interpretation, teaching English or higher education, and arts and culture. And as Joe already introduced, I am the founder of Ikigai Connections. My business baby turned 5 in August, so I have been gambatteiruing for a while, and it's been a lot of fun. And my main service is the Nihongo Jobs job board. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, my job board is my biggest, when I came back from Japan, I was wondering why there were no job boards for this exact topic. There used to be something called JapaneseJobs.com. I don't know, Joe, if you remember back in the day, kind of dating myself. It doesn't exist right now. I actually wanted to buy the URL, but came up with Nihongo Jobs instead. I just would like to be that bridge, the kakehashi between companies in the US and job seekers in the US. And I focus on the US because that's where I'm at. So just a heads up that these slides are actually from a webinar I did with the US-Japan Bridging Foundation. And I urge everybody to go visit their website. I think they actually have under their resources an entire webinar series with quite a few topics. You don't have to go to the JET or English teaching one because you know that one, but there's so much more about just business Nihongo in general from our local Eastern Michigan University sensei, Tabuse sensei. There's just international education, also as well as internships, resumes. There's a former JET, Emily Frank, I believe, was one of the speakers as well, which I'll talk about later. And also Kamara Tafalo is a former JET in Canada who also did the one on resumes. So just a lot of really interesting people. I definitely urge you to check it out. They are a wonderful organization. So this slide I'm going to kind of skip over because I used it at the time for people who were interested in working in Japan. I'm going to skip over to the language portion. I know that not everybody wants to use their Japanese language skills in a job, but for those that do, I'd like to mention a few things about this topic. Hold on, let me just adjust my screen real quick. All right. So will you get the slides afterwards? Absolutely. I can absolutely share them with Joe, and then you can share them along with everybody. So no worries about having to take notes furiously. I actually have very strong opinions on this topic of being bilingual, as well as the JLPT. I think that if you've had the experience of being overseas as a JET, you have already a great foundation for working in any kind of global business environment. And I keep telling companies in the US at least that the definitions they're requesting in job descriptions for being fluent or bilingual, those are sometimes a little bit, they don't understand the nuances that come with learning Japanese. They don't understand that there's hiragana, katakana, kanji, that there's keigo, that honorifics. They think that by writing bilingual, they're going to get somebody that speaks the language, but they themselves cannot guide or figure out where that person is on the scale. So I keep telling people, let's use a different kind of categorization system, such as not required but appreciated, basic, intermediate, advanced, and native levels. So it's still very tricky in the US. Employers are not understanding it. So the reason I'm mentioning this here is in case you see a job description and it says you must be fluent or bilingual, I urge you to go back and in your cover letter say, hey, I noticed that you are requiring fluent, but looking through your job description responsibilities, I have the idea that you can use intermediate, and that is where I'm at. Or may I add, like, you can even ask questions. Can you please let me know a little bit more about the exact specific speaking, listening, reading, writing requirements, and maybe they can get back to you. A lot of times the HR people who are writing these job descriptions have no idea. And sometimes there's jobs out there that somebody applies for, it says bilingual, and they literally don't use any Japanese at all. It's just, they think they have to, the HR people think they have to use it. So I urge you to dig deeper. Also, employers are requiring JLPT N1 and all these things. Now, the test in Japan, I'm not going to talk about Japan side since we're mostly US. I think there's one person later for Japan, but let me just focus on the US for now. A lot of employers do not know what JLPT is. They don't really know what it tests. They have no idea that it's just a certification test. I still urge people to take it, but I'm not saying it should be the end all be all for hiring. So if you are interested in digging further into this, I have a link for the JLPT that I'll actually show you later where to access it. This is my love letter to employers to stop hiring just based on the JLPT. And cultural skills, as I mentioned, just the fact that you lived overseas, you know simple things about living in a foreign country, how to get around using transportation, even something as simple and maybe funny as knowing how to take your garbage out. Like all these little things, you know how it is. Mondays are burnables, Tuesdays is non-burnables, and all these crazy like rules. Just living in a foreign country is very helpful to provide advice to employers in the US who maybe send employees to Japan for business. And these employees have no idea what it's like to be in Japan. So I often say, hey, there's even things like travel departments or travel support roles where you can help tell people, hey, if you're going to Japan, you should do this. This is how you pay for tickets on a train. Keep your ticket afterwards. If you go to an izakaya, make sure you have socks without holes in them because you'll be taking your shoes off. Have business cards, like all those cultural things that you think is atarimaya for you. Like, oh, that's like totally understandable, is not for the typical American traveling to Japan on business. So that's just kind of a quick overview there for the language. So now that was just a background. Now we're going to start digging into the 4 main career paths. All right, this is just 4 that I picked that I think is a more generic understanding, but there's so many other career paths out there. And just like Joe mentioned, there's some that you just have no idea exist because the companies work with people like us to create roles. I also had a role at Tech America here in Michigan, where I started off as an administrative assistant helping the directors. And then they're like, oh, Japanese, you know what? We could use you for here and for there and for here. Eventually, I became a manager of the executive admin department where all my employees were, they called them bilingual, but they were college grads with 3 years of Japanese experience who were able to learn on the job. And they came through my department and eventually were sent to the accounting department and to the design department and to engineering department. So this all came about because the employer was willing to work and needed people like me with my skills. So they created a lot of opportunities. So don't let this be a limit to anything stopping you. All right. In business, like I just mentioned, administration, sales is another option, financial and technical. So let's dig a little deeper into each of these. And by the way, I should mention, if you have questions, just like Joe mentioned in the beginning, at the end for the Q&A, I would like to go around to each person and to kind of hear like a 30-second intro of your information. And if you have a question, I would like to answer at least one question per person. If you don't have a question, just say pass, but I really want to offer everybody at least one good question to talk through. So, administration. I hear so many people saying, oh, starting as an admin assistant is beneath me. I've spent all this time overseas. I should be doing something better. I have a degree in this and this and this. Yes, I agree that sometimes in some companies, maybe that is applicable, but a lot of times it could be your madoguchi, your entrance into a company. And that's a lot of times what I've experienced, at least here in Michigan with our automotive industry, where you start at like a big company, let's say Toyota or Aishin or any of these big suppliers or tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 companies. And once you get to know the people there, once you get to know about the company, and once you get to know about the different departments and where your interests may lie, it's literally just a starting point. And then you yourself will know, hey, you know what? I'm actually interested in the marketing department. Now that I know somebody there, I can talk to them and find out what are their needs. Maybe whether it's using Japanese language or cultural skills or not, but like you're a part of this environment that is maybe related to Japan just because the company is a subsidiary. So there's a lot of options that you can find out once you enter a company, because then it's easier to move internally. Of course, depending on the company, not every company is open to it, but majority are. They get to know you, you get to know them, and maybe you think you're backtracking, but in a sense, I believe it's just like a get in, figure things out, and then advance. So a lot of times the bare minimum is computer and writing skills, which everybody already has basically. An organized personality is typically needed for an admin role, and a willingness to try anything. Sometimes the admin support is kind of like a non-demo, like let's do kind of everything. So you're involved with a lot of different responsibilities, but actually that could be a great way for you to learn what you also like to do. And the preparation for this is, I believe, coming back from the JET program, of course, is a great way because you've already done a lot of, like, even let's say you were teaching at a few elementary schools, you're already coming up with lesson plans. You are organizing groups of children. You have so many soft skills that are applicable. And of course, you can add on to that any internships or part-time jobs you may have had. And if you need to, if you never like used Excel, for example, then you can just take an online Excel training program and just have that so you're ready for a company. So you can find that out based on the job description. In the upper right-hand corner here, you'll see a QR code, and I have them on various slides throughout. This is what I used with the U.S.-Japan Bridging Foundation in case somebody wanted to read the Senpai success story that I'm sharing. So this goes to my website where I link every article that you can just click on and see. It also takes you back to the U.S.-Japan Bridging Foundation, which again, huge fan. I think you should check it out. So Ashley was actually my very first executive assistant in my new department. And she started off as an intern while she was a college senior. And she never thought she could apply because her Japanese was, in her opinion, mama. But when I interviewed her, I was like, yes, I want her. She came along. And as an intern, even though she worked only a few days a week, I got her involved in this project that kind of connected Japan and the US together. And she became so important during her internship that we had to send her to Japan on a business trip as an intern. So that was kind of unheard of. Even the visa people were like, what? How do you send an intern from college? And she did it during her exam week, which was, I don't know how she did it, but a lot of interesting ways that you can get into a company through that. Next, moving along to business and sales. So sales is a little bit tricky, especially if you want it to be related with Japan. Most companies for their sales roles will require fluent Japanese language skills. So they want you to interact with their Japanese customers with like beautiful keigo and, you know, no mistakes, things like that. And I understand their concern, but I also, I feel that, and this is something that if you're interested in sales, I want you to use this as a way to promote yourself. If you are outgoing, you have customer service oriented personality, and let's say your Japanese isn't phenomenal, but you really just like the connection with people, you can still be a great salesperson because when you, let's say you are meeting with a Japanese salesperson who's representing a Japanese company in Chicago, they're going to be, it could be a wow factor for them to say, oh, Nihongo no shabereru Amerikajin da. Like, wow, we have this company who we're working with and they are just so global. It could be very impressive for the company. So sometimes the really small companies can't get past that way of thinking, but a lot of times I find that this is actually pretty impressive if you have a salesperson who has, let's say, about intermediate and up, just to kind of understand the customer's needs. If your listening is better to understand their needs, you can reply in, you know, not perfect Japanese, and you can write emails in English that they can translate. So just be flexible in terms of this. So some prep is to practice your business Japanese, which is always going to be a plus. Of course, the JLPT is requested, but again, you can refer to my article, which is in that QR code as well too, just to say, hey, I understand you want JLPT N1 for this, but let me tell you how I can be a great candidate for this because of my personality, my experience in this industry in English, and my understanding of your company services. So promote yourself. All right, moving on to financial. We have, now this one is a little bit tricky because a lot of companies in the US are desperate to find people with CPAs as well as with practically fluent Japanese language skills. They're so hard to find. There's so few people who have the CPA portion and the Japanese component. So if you do have this, I think you could find yourself a very good job in the US and even overseas possibly. They do require the high level as well, but again, I also urge you to speak with the hiring person to say exactly how important is this? Can I, kind of like the salesperson argument that I just mentioned. So to prepare for this, if you're interested in this world at all, certifications are absolutely necessary. So coming back from JET, let's say you're kind of into accounting, Google accounting or tax or legal, whatever, and just kind of look into it and see if it strikes your fancy, get some certifications because they're definitely needing that. And also starting early, this is what I mentioned in my previous presentation. If you know anybody who's in like high school and interested in this, and they are even remotely interested in getting their CPA, talk to them, tell them this is going to be a very good career for them because there's very few people out there who can do this. All right, the last portion is technical. So Japan-related manufacturing is huge in the US. At least I see it huge in Michigan. We have the automotive industry, and like when Toyota comes, they bring all their suppliers with them. And in various parts of the US as well too, there's pockets for manufacturing. And of course, they look at engineering degrees. However, and I'll show you in a second, yes, if you have Japanese on top of it is a huge plus because they may or may not be expecting that, especially because they send their expats from Japan to come to the US to work at these manufacturing environments. And those expats are sent here for their technical expertise, not for their language expertise. So if you have Japanese language skills, you could be that support, even if you may not understand like the engineering concepts at all. So I'll give an example here. Because I consider myself a fairly okay interpreter, but I don't know technical. I don't have an engineering degree. I was sent to a facility in Tennessee just for a couple of weeks to be out on the shop floor, hard hat, glasses and all. And they were just like, just help communicate because the people on the floor from the US and the expats coming from Japan have nothing to connect them with in any English or Japanese level. So I was thrown in to talk about a product that I have no idea anything about, even in English on the car. And they were just like, just help communicate. We got around with, whiteboard and showing numbers on production and pointing to things. And I was able to help them. Maybe I wasn't a technical interpreter per se, but just having the language skills and my desire to be there and learn something new about this automotive component was huge. And it was fairly good money too. So of course, I'll talk about interpreting, translating later, but technical is really, really important if you're into anything like this. So of course, internships in high school and college are helpful. If you have any STEM-related programs post-JET, I'm sure you can find a lot online. Maybe there's some course you can take. And here's an example of Lauren here from our local area in Michigan who got a job in Toyota, even though she was not an engineering major by any stretch of the imagination. She actually wrote a story for my blog to say how she did it because she focused on her language skills and she wanted to learn about the engineering. So she started a little bit later and she's got a very good career. She's a part of the young professionals that Toyota has, this internal group. She's doing very, very well. So moving on to the next main career path. I'm kind of zooming through this. I'm also watching the time. I have about 10 minutes-ish to get through the next three, no big deal. So interpreting, translating. This is very fun for me to talk about. So I'm just going to summarize. And if you are interested in this section, you can click on the recording for the US-Japan Bridging Foundation where I go more in depth Today, I won't go as much in depth. So you can become an informal interpreter translator, kind of like what I mentioned with my Ashley, who came in with Japanese language skills and was just helping the communication. She was not a certified interpreter translator, but she knew the language, she had the desire, and she became that bridge. You can also become a freelance interpreter translator. That is kind of a little bit difficult to get into if you are doing freelance, but it's not impossible. In-house is something that companies like the Toyotas will hire you to become like, you're just going to interpret and translate. Ideally, you're going to pick one or the other because it can be a little complicated to be like the jack of all trades for interpreting and translating, especially when some people have a strength in speaking and listening or reading and writing, but not impossible. And then project management, I'll dig into that a little bit deeper. So I'm kind of zooming through this, but what I'd like for you to do is, if you want to become an interpreter translator in-house at a company, I highly recommend starting with an admin role where you are learning about the company, you hear the terminology, and you have the opportunity with slightly less stress coming on you to learn the lingo that you hear, create your own little dictionary on Excel or whatever you want. And then you can say, hey, I know about the company. I'm ready for my promotion. I like that department. Let me help because I know they need help with the Japanese. And you can start off with like intermediate Japanese level if you're interested. Next, freelance, as I mentioned, it can be a little bit difficult to do this, but it's not impossible. And if anybody's interested in this, I can absolutely talk about it later on in the Q&A. In-house, like I just mentioned, it's a little bit difficult to get started with, like, let's say you come back from JET and you definitely want to interpret, translate in-house at a company. They will require you almost to know their subject matter terminology before you even start, which is impossible. And I tell companies, you can't go to a degree, you can't go to any kind of certification program to learn your company's terminology. You have to start internally and hear and listen and learn. They just don't get it. So we have to keep sharing that with them. So don't let it stop you, but it's definitely possible. I will say one of my friends is an interpreter and translator in our local Toyota office, does not have the JLPT, started off with just administrative support and is their main go-to now after many years of being there. Fantastic person. Again, you don't have to you don't have to go to Monterey Institute for International Studies to get a degree or certification. You can still do it working up your way in there. After JET is a perfect opportunity because you've already got the listening down, I'm sure, so you can get started no problem. Project management, this is where you can support, and a lot of the job ads out there require, sorry about that. A lot of the job ads do require project managers to have the fluent portion down as well too. But I do say that this is something that, kind of like with the sales role, if you have the organizational and customer service skills and you're thorough and know how to keep people on track within a huge project, your language skills are a plus in this regard. And you can definitely do that very well. And here's an example. Maybe you're familiar with Stacy Smith. She's a former JET in New York City. She's done some phenomenal interpreting and or mostly I think interpreting projects for like famous actors from Japan, people that I'm so jealous of. Her article on the new frontier of interpreting was written during the COVID times. Very interesting. And then there's a link to her site, which you can see like the pictures she's got with these people. It's amazing. Graham is he's an interpreter translator also he's in the UK, and Nicole was also one of my former employees who started in the automotive industry, did the admin support, and then realized, you know what? Actually, this is not my Ikigai. I'm going to go back to what I was doing. And I really like her story because she talks about like that portion, as well as talks about how she got into manga by starting as a freelance translator on Gengo.com. And what she's doing now, she's actually living overseas and just living her life. So very, very interesting too. All right, moving on to the third portion on teaching English in higher ed. These next two portions aren't as long, so I'll definitely you already know most of this anyways because you did the JET program and you taught English in Japan. So what I wanted to highlight here though is that you can do a lot with what you've done in Japan. So Jess, for example, she's in Scotland, did the JET. when she returned home, she just really wanted to have like the Japanese like conversational practice. So she created her own business and was doing Japanese teaching, all levels of Japanese. I mean, it doesn't even have to be like superbly fluent. And I don't think she really even had like a certification or a university degree for this. She just wanted to have conversational practice. And she built her own business because she saw a need for this. Kyle is a Great Lakes Jet Alumni Association who was on the JET program, was networking over like dinner with some people from in an izakaya, a local izakaya, communicated with these people, came home to Michigan, found out that they're located here, and because of the networking was able to get an opportunity with them here in Michigan. So just really neat how people can just do all sorts of different things after JET. All right, teaching here. I just wanted to mention that, of course, you can become, of course, you probably have to get a certification for teaching at some kind of university or community college. Sometimes they require you to have it state specific, but you can teach about Japanese language, even as simple as like basic Japanese at a community college. If you hear about it and look into it, you actually, with your experience, might be able just to take a certification for teaching in your state, and then you can apply your skills and do this. I know in Michigan, we're definitely looking for some professors of just, I think, basic, like the 101 courses on Japanese, as long as you get the Michigan teaching requirements. So history, politics, culture, it's never too late to get started. And ways that you can do this is, you can maybe talk to schools or reach out to any local universities, see if they have a Japanese language program. A great resource is shinpaidesho.com. Paula Sensei is really, really Genki and quite very much into the academia world. So you can learn a lot there. And she also posts, I think she focuses on most East Asia, but I think she also has some Japan specific academic roles. And lastly, you have your own senpai, Claudia Gonzalez, who said she's very willing to communicate with anybody regarding pursuing a degree or pursuing a higher education degree, as well as working there. So if you have any questions, maybe your next, nomikai or event, if you do see each other in person, definitely take a look. All right. Oh, thank you, Celia, for certified public accountant. Sorry about that. Nancy, public school K-12 language teaching, also possible. Absolutely. Public school, college, community college, it's really, some schools I know are just, sometimes they're desperate to find somebody who just speaks the language, and you may be able to apply and say, hey, I can definitely teach this, 9th grade Japanese 101 course, and share your experience. That's already what you already know. There is so much more than what the students know and need. So absolutely look into your local areas if you're interested. They may or may not even post this on any job boards. So definitely something to kind of like network or find out locally. So here's a couple of great teaching senpai success stories, or teaching related. So Faye Sensei is our Great Lakes State Alumni Association teacher here, teaches high school Japanese, one of the most popular high school teachers here in our area. Monique was very interested in the university route in Japan and did it. She outlined like a path that was just so many, how can I say this? There were just so many struggles that she had, but then she finally did it, and she's really enjoying her time in Japan as a university professor. And Emily Frank is a former JET in Denver, has her own Denver career consulting company, very quirky, awesome, talks about how to use your JET skills in a kind of, not necessarily teaching, but just like counseling and helping others with their skills. Nancy, I'm in Florida, and there are several former JETs who teach K-12. Yes, there are definitely. It depends on the state, so you have to look into your certifications that are required. Thank you for commenting. All right, last section is on arts and culture. If you are into anything art related, there's so many things that are out there that you really may not be aware of until you start digging. So I just mentioned a couple things, like look into your local Japan America Society or Japan Business Societies. They may be, I know your Chicago one is very active and they have so many events going on. I say attend some of these events that you may be interested in, find the people, meet the people who are kind of involved in, tea ceremony. I think there's a Polish person who's promoting tea ceremony at your local, either Consulate or Japan America Society in Chicago coming up soon. You can attend the event and be like, I would love to see what I can do with my tea ceremony. I think she imports tea to Illinois. So that's something to look into. Maybe on the break, I'll take a look. Manga, anime, there's so many things as well too, related to translation, publishing, promotion, art related. There's just so many things out there that you may not realize could be related to careers, but the sky's the limit. To prep for this, just get creative and search online. If you can search Nihongo de on Google, you might be able to find something interesting too. And volunteering or working at any of these organizations is going to be a great way for you to get your in. I'll mention a couple of these success stories. My friend Byron, we went to school in Saitama together, also next scholarship recipient, has a business where he promotes Japanese culture and Japanese language from Spain. And Tom is somebody who does landscape architecture. I never knew that was a thing, but the Japanese gardens that you have in your areas, that's where these landscape architects are going to be. Showbiz with Charles, my friend who I went to school in Kyoto with, got into showbiz in Japan, as well as doing a little bit in the US with his Japanese language skills. It's bizarre how many things you can do. So hopefully this will give you some ideas that really nothing is impossible. And then Shannon, our local librarian at Novi here, if you know Novi, that's for little Japantown, she loved manga. She applied for this librarian role at Novi Library, and she literally has to focus on importing manga, making sure it's promoted to the local area, and having the Japan corner set up and coming up with like Japanese language courses and events at her library. I mean, that's pretty cool too. So lots of opportunities. So as I wrap up this section, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to address the difficulties in job searching. I know that many recruiters and companies prefer that you're already back in the US. So if you had the experience of looking for a job in the US while being in the JET program and coming here, I know that was probably very difficult, but you're back. If you're back here looking for an opportunity now, I think it would be a little bit easier. And don't worry, don't stress about the time you missed. I know that's very stressful. If anybody who's going to be watching this recording is overseas and coming back soon, I think the difficulty in the communication, the networking is very difficult to do if you are overseas, but don't let that stop you. Just realize some companies have this desire to actually meet somebody in person, or just know that the person is already relocated to the area they're looking for a job in. So if you're looking for a job outside of your current situation, you may face this, but don't worry, just a little bit of patience. You may need to share with the companies you're looking to work with what JET is, because they may not really know what it is. And you have to promote yourself and say, hey, I didn't just go overseas for a couple of years. I did a lot, and here is what I learned. And mention your soft skills and your cover letter. Explain to them that you're not just entry level. You actually do have work experience that can qualify. You just have to share how that applies to the role that you're applying for. They won't get it at first. As I mentioned at the beginning, reverse culture shock is just one thing that you're already dealing with. And I know how tough that can be. Running out of money is stressful too. So hopefully you have a support system to, family or whatever to help you through that. But I know that can also be an additional stress. But what I'd like for you to focus on are get your resume or CV if you're going in the academic world, get that kind of updated. And if you have questions about your resume, definitely check out the US-Japan Bridging Foundation with Kamera Tafalo. Do some research. It takes time. You might need to consider, if you are looking for a job, it is kind of a full-time job to look for a job, and it's frustrating, and employers, not every HR person is going to get back to you. So you feel like you're ghosted, and it's stressful, but just kokoro no junbi shite, realize, okay, this is going to be something I have to focus on. It's not something that's going to be easy to just send out 100 resumes and get 100 responses. So do some outreach, networking, which we'll talk about in the next section. Patience and dreaming and planning are wonderful, and I urge everyone to dream. But honestly, action is the best step, baby steps, because I communicate with a lot of people who just have these awesome dreams, but they're not actually doing something to get there. So one step at a time, action is your best friend. And that's
Can I
it.
mention something, Kasia, before
Yes, of
you stop?
course.
When you're looking for a job, the best advice I can get is to try to find somebody in the company already, because a lot of jobs aren't posted. Most of them are filled before they're posted, to be honest. So if you can get your foot in the door just by knowing somebody, just make a list of target companies and jump on LinkedIn and try to find any kind of connection that can get your foot in the door. And I've found throughout my career that that's the best way to go. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. And you'll meet a lot of these people at these events that you go to, the Japan America Society events or Consulate of Chicago or wherever you are located. Like that's your foot in the door, like Joe mentioned. So yeah, I know that was kind of quick, but I did kind of finish it in time. So I think we're good to start our break if you are, Joe.
Yeah, I'm good.
All
So
right.
we'll come back at what, 12:10?
12:10. Yes.
Right. Central time. Sorry, Kasia.
Yes, 12:10 Central. And I know somebody else is in Ohio. So our 1:10 Eastern.
Right. Thanks. That was great.
All right. We'll come back
Looking
for more.
forward to
See you
the next.
soon. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you were energized and ready for this part 2. I have to put my headset in now, so hopefully there won't be too much background noise. Let me share my slides and get into networking, which is maybe one of my favorite topics. All right, let me adjust my screen real quick. And all right. Second. All right. So networking. This topic in itself is also a little bit more in depth, and I will kind of summarize what I did with the US Japan Bridging Foundation. But if you are interested in digging a little deeper, and this part in particular is something that either makes you super nervous or you want to learn more about it, definitely check out that presentation. There's 4 sections. We'll talk about an overview and benefits, in-person networking, online networking, and some real life examples. So there'll be scripts here that you can use afterwards. I'll send you a copy of these slides so you can just kind of copy paste if you want. So I like this quote: where you are in 5 years depends on who you meet today. Networking is not something so transactional that you meet somebody at an event and then you expect something from them tomorrow. You have to give things time. You have to lower your expectations. And I think a lot of people just think it's something magical and it's going to happen overnight. It's not the case. But the pluses are that you're actually creating relationships and friendships. So just don't have too many expectations from networking and you will be surprisingly successful. So this portion of the webinar will be helpful for those who are afraid of quote unquote networking, are starting out on any part of their career journey, want a refresher course on the basics, and want the focus to be related to Japanese people. So top things that influence your career, as we know, is education, experience, resume, and networking. And this people really, a lot of times people miss this part. And I think with the pandemic, everybody just got a little more inward and we kind of, I don't know about you, but I became way more introverted and I've kind of stopped attending all these events because they were canceled. And then when they came back, it was just like, oh, but I like staying home in my comfy pants. And just after a while, you just kind of get accustomed to just being on your own. Of course, there's people who love and thrive in those environments, but I think a lot of people got a little bit more. Networking is your secret tool to really getting some great opportunities that may or may not be posted on any job board, kind of like what Jill mentioned in the first half. By getting to know people, you may actually hear about an opportunity before it gets posted on any job board. So obviously I run a job board. I know that's a minus for me, but it's true. There's so many ways that you can get to know people and hear what happens. So sometimes who you know and who knows about your merits is more important than what you know. So the definition of networking is the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. And why is it important? It's good for your job openings. Like I mentioned, sometimes they're not mentioned publicly. It's a career boost, kind of serves as your social proof. And you grow as a person because you are learning from people and their experiences. It's a sense of community, especially for us in the US Japan community. Once you get involved and get to know a lot of these organizations, you just kind of, I don't know, I personally feel just great when I've connected with people from other Japan societies and other Japan business societies and other JET organizations or chapters. It just, I don't know, I love it. It's my personal, I appreciate it. And you can do the same, whether it's the US Japan community or in your world that you're interested in your career. So when you're struggling on the job, you can tap into your network to attain clarity on your next step and for help in taking it. This is very true because you can, there's opportunities to ask somebody to, kind of mentor you in a sense. Maybe, I mean, I'm not saying like they take you on as a mentor full-time job. You just can ask questions, be like, hey, so-and-so, you work at this company, you've been there for a few years. It's kind of something I'm really interested in. Can I hear what kind of job, what you do on the job? And maybe it's just a quick email, or maybe it's a 15-minute Zoom call that they kindly get on, or even coffee, or you see them at an event and you ask them a few questions. There's a lot you can learn by doing so. So why is this important for Japanese people? As you may know, relationships are fundamental to everything, internally within a company and externally society and networking. So there's a great webinar, again, the US Japan Bridging Foundation, how I built a business career related to Japan. And if you don't know Jessica Kennett Cork, she's in Georgia. She's phenomenal. She actually wrote a Senpai success story from my blog as well too. I might have a link to it later. She was involved in her Japan America Society for many, many years since she was, in college. And then throughout, she knew this one person who, and you can read about it. I can put it in the links later. She actually knew somebody for so long through the Japan America Society that they eventually came up to her and said, we're kind of looking for this opportunity, this person to join our company. Are you interested? Do you know anybody? Boom, she's in. Now she's a vice president of the marketing, I believe, and relations. So I totally botched her title, but she's just a good person who got this opportunity because she came to mind when they were like, who could be hired for this new role in our organization? So that's the October 6th, 2021 Japan webinar. So you can nurture your relationships with no expectation that you're going to get anything. I think that's important. A lot of people go into networking like, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get, so many things from these people that I communicate with. It's kind of just building the relationship that's key. And as we know with Japanese people, that's so important. You have to kind of, the words uchi and soto, right? You kind of have to get into someone's in-group to get to know them as a person, get to know about their organization, as opposed to just cold calling or sending in your resume without any kind of something to support it. Same with sales. Like even if you are doing sales with a Japanese company, you can't just cold call a company. You have to network and get involved and get to know who to contact and who's the right person to talk to about this topic. So as you know, very important. With whom do you network? You can start with your friends and acquaintances, because I know it can be scary for some people. School alumni, you've got alumni programs, especially JET alumni as well too. Your network reaches not just in the United States, but beyond. So you can really tap that network. Mentors and experts, company representatives. And a lot of times people are like, well, if I want to get into the whole like Japan community, how do I do it with my Japanese? I say stick with English. It is understood by most everybody anyways. So it's not a risk to do that. But if you do know some Japanese, it's very impressive if you can, use some Japanese in your LinkedIn connection request or your email or in talking with them. It's very impressive. And they're like, oh, jozu desu ne. Like, how did you learn your Japanese? And tell me about it. And you may really connect on using your Nihongo, even if you're so nervous to do that. And start where you are. So don't worry about this fluency thing, again, that I talked about in the first half. And it does get better with practice. My key phrase that I always tell everybody, I even did a little YouTube video with my friend Shie, and I'm not a YouTuber, so don't judge me on that, but dozo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. That's your key phrase. You're going to use that. You've already heard it. You've already used it in the JET program, I'm sure. That's what you use over the phone. That's what you use when you're introducing yourself to somebody. It's what you write in your email. Dozo yoroshiku onegai shimasu. If you say that, they'll be like, oh, sugoi. And then they'll start clapping about your peta-peta-ness, about being fluent. So I'll mention a word about personality types. Introverts, obviously, it's hard for introverts who are, it's hard to meet people. Maybe you're shy, or maybe you just, being with people kind of drains your energy. So then you can start with online opportunities, which I'll talk about in one section. Extroverts just thrive off of the opportunity to go and meet people, and they can also do online events as well. So kind of, if you're really new to this, start off where you feel comfortable. Don't force yourself to go to events if you don't want to, but it's, maybe you can enjoy the thrill of the ride and try for a little bit. If you have to get over this barrier, I think it will help you. If you can get over this barrier of being shy and not wanting to meet people, it really will help you in your career. Of course, if you are in a career that works remotely, almost industry-wide, and if you don't really need to be with people in person because everybody's in different locations anyways, that might be a different story. But see what is important for the industry that you're into, and see what kind of like take the next step and challenge yourself. So let's start with in-person networking. Courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. So just taking that first step to sign up and go somewhere, that is a huge plus. Even if you go and you don't talk to anybody, I want you to be proud of just attending. The next time, maybe you can talk to people. Of course, this presentation came out around COVID time, so I'm not going to dig into that too much. But now a lot of events are continuing, and you can check out what your Japan Society offers. Consulates, US JETAA, JETRO even has lots of events, meetups. I know in Michigan we have at least 3 Japanese meetups that you just go and you can talk in Japanese and in English. You can get a hand. Now, they also most likely have a lot of online events as well too. So check out, just get on these mailing lists, pick one event and see if it fits your schedule, and just try and attend. In-person networking, of course, I still highly recommend having a business card, because I know we're into the whole, paper free and having everything digital, especially if your title keeps changing all the time, maybe your company doesn't offer you business cards. Go to Office Depot, whatever company is nearby, get yourself a pack of business cards for like $20 and just have them, because this is a great way for you to leave a little bit about you with somebody, because we meet so many people. We will not remember how to spell somebody's names and how to find them and email addresses. It's just so much easier to just say, hey, this is my card. If you ever need anything, let me know. Always have them in your wallet. And just, if you have a little meishi holder, like a business card case too, that's very impressive for Japanese companies. But I still highly recommend having something to leave people with. Elevator pitch. This is something that you can practice. And I think it's important to just, especially if you're not used to networking and it just scares you, just come up with a little thing, just your name, kind of what you do, and end it with, great to meet you. So during this time, I was kind of practicing a little bit about the elevator pitch. And if we have time, if we're bored, we can do that later at the end of the presentation, but just a quick sentence just to practice. And you can Google this if you need help in coming up with scripts. Asking questions is your tool to sounding comfortable in networking opportunities. So if you don't want to talk about yourself, you're talking with somebody from an organization, you ask them questions and let them do the talking. And they love it because they're being listened to and they feel important. So asking questions is a trick, I believe. And then following up. Let's say you go to an event, you meet 4 people, you get their business cards or they get yours. You follow up with them and you say, hello, Suzuki-san, it was so nice to meet you at the Japan America Society event last Friday. I loved hearing your story about how you are living in the US now for 3 years. Let's stay in touch. That keeps you memorable, and it also helps you remember who you met, where, and when, because you could just Google or look into your email and see when you met somebody. It's very helpful. Maya Angelou says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So be kind to people. They'll be kind to you. Networking shouldn't be as scary as we think it is. Of course, if you go to some scary event, that's a different story, but hopefully people are just, in general, I think everybody's going to be nervous. So if you feel confident enough to just ask a couple questions, you will do fine. So online networking. I like this quote because it reminds me of people who do job searching and send out like 1,000 resumes with no cover letters, just like splattering the internet with their resumes, it doesn't really help. So instead of trying to shake 20 hands, get 30 business cards, and add 40 people to your LinkedIn, consider taking the time with authentic introductions and conversations that are grounded in connection over racing to see how quickly you can meet somebody or get something from a relationship. If you are focusing too much and just like literally like passing out your business card, like in a speed dating type style, I don't know how effective that's going to be. So let's talk about different ways of doing it. Email, reaching out to somebody, social media, online events, kind of like this, where we're seeing each other, but we're in our own homes, conversation partners, one-on-one virtual calls. So let's talk about the social media part. I would, especially if you're job searching or concerned about your career being connected to your personal profiles, I highly recommend realizing that you need to keep your private and your career-focused platforms separate. Because I do know that a lot of HR people will look and Google you and see, what's this person do? How do they, present themselves? Because you eventually will become a representation of this company online. So I would definitely watch out for this. Make sure your profiles are a little bit separate. Use the best social media for your desired industry. I use LinkedIn. That's my main profile or my main social media tool. But I know a lot of people, especially if they're into like translating or manga or gaming, I know Twitter or X is very good for that. Facebook could be good for organizations that maybe focus on like NPOs or arts or creativity, where you're trying to reach a lot of people that way. It really depends on what you're interested in. So if you're networking for career related purposes, then I definitely say just pick one and start there. If you try to do everything, it might be overwhelming. Focus on one. Linked or Instagram also, I missed that one. That's a good one too. Today, I'd like to talk about LinkedIn, just because I believe it's a very good tool to use for generic business opportunities. So, and I will say on LinkedIn, I have met so many people in the US, Japan world, and you have great conversations. I feel as if I'm connected to people in so many different states, even though I haven't been able to physically travel to those locations. So it's really, really good. If you're interested in keeping connected with the Japan community as well too. For example, Business in Japan is a great group that you get in, and it's a very there's no spam because people keep deleting the spam that does go in there. It's a lot of conversations, and it's really kind of nice to just stay connected that way with people. So I urge you to just find people and companies in your desired industry. I'd like for you to read people's profiles and add messages when connecting. And this I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Interacting, especially on LinkedIn, if you like, and if you comment on posts of people that you're following, is the person who posts then sees your face and name and title, and maybe they can then reach out to you. So for you, it's a quick little like, so that's not too scary, right? And then maybe they'll reach out to you, say, hey, let's connect. And then you can have a conversation. Posting, if you do post on LinkedIn, share what's appropriate. And if you are interested in the whole, let's say, whatever your industry, just post related to that, because then you'll draw in people who are also interested in that topic or industry. And of course, this can be applied to any other social media platform as well. So here's an example on LinkedIn. Let's say I put into the search engine, I want to find people who are in the Jet, Michigan world. You'll get a list of people, and you can click connect, whether you see this on your desktop or on your cell phone. I highly, highly, highly urge you to please connect with a message. So it changes over time depending on your what device you're using. And if you're doing it from the cell phone, it's really kind of hard to find it, but try to personalize your invitation to link, especially on LinkedIn, and I actually just broke my rule earlier today with this. I accidentally sent from my cell phone, I clicked on connect, and I forgot that on the cell phone, you have to click on more and then select personalize your invite. If you click just connect, the person is going to get an invitation, which is fine. But if they don't know who you are, if they don't recognize your name, and if they don't think that anything about your little line matches what they would like in a connection, they may just ignore it. So to avoid people ignoring your connection request, add a comment And you can say, I'll show you examples later on, but just say, hey, it was really nice to meet you earlier today. I'd love to connect. And then you can get started with that. Now, I believe in the last like week or so, LinkedIn just started limiting how many personalized connections you can make, but people are angry about that. So maybe they'll take it back. I'm not sure, but I think 10 per month or something like that. So hopefully that'll go away. But another, I actually don't have this in the slide, but if you are a part of a group on LinkedIn, if you go into the group, you can send a message request from there and it won't count toward it, I think. So anyways, groups are good because you can also do that and send a message without having to worry about paying for LinkedIn. The free version is very robust. This slide is about interacting, liking, commenting on posts that you follow. And there's just so much out there that's US Japan related. And again, you can pick whatever industry you're interested in. So, but for posting, as I mentioned, I kind of like to post things that are related to Japanese jobs in the US. So I will either post my own comments and information, or I will share things that are related to Japanese that other people are doing. So that's kind of what I do with my own personal LinkedIn page. Some tips is to thank people. And now this is in general, not just LinkedIn, but thank people if they do offer some great advice and they do spend some time on a call with you. If they go out for coffee, definitely try to get their coffee. Sometimes you can send a Starbucks card e-gift for, just to thank people for their time. No ghosting. And I know how difficult this is. I am actually probably a ghoster as well too, just because I am so behind in my inbox, but try to reply to people, because it's just sometimes, if you do hop on a call with someone, you never thank them, they're going to be like, well, what was that about? So especially someone who goes out of their way, be sure to send them a message. I have to warn you that there are job-related scams out there on all social media platforms. And it's actually, I've posted a few times on my LinkedIn how this happened to a couple people I knew. So just be careful. If you have questions about this, I can give examples towards the end in the Q&A. So here's some scripts that I'd like to share. And by the way, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to try to wrap up in the next 8 to 10 minutes so we can have Q&A. All right. Here's an example. I heard you on the Business Success Japan podcast and really enjoyed your story. I related to X topic and Y topic and agree with this. Or I have a question about this and it would be nice to connect. We joined the same online networking event and I didn't get a chance to be in the same breakout room, but I'd love to connect and learn more about you. And here are some scripts that are more goal related. I read your article in Kokoro Media and really appreciate your style. I see that you're a guest writer for many publications and would love to connect and see more of what you write, as I am also an aspiring author. So this is a great way to plant that seed for your goal, but you're not fully outright yet. You have to build a relationship first. You're not fully outright saying, let me write for you. And maybe you can, really depends on the situation, but here you're planting that seed. You're just starting the relationship building. I discovered your profile because my dream is to one day become an aerospace engineer in Japan. I'd appreciate the opportunity to connect and live vicariously through your posts. So here's just let's connect, not I want to know so many things from you. Can you write me an essay about this topic, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes that can be a little overwhelming depending on who you're speaking with, especially if you're doing outreach to somebody who's like upper management or an executive. Like if you ask huge questions to somebody who's super busy, they probably won't get to it. So just make it easy on them just to accept and take it baby steps at a time. Create a relationship instead of asking for too much upfront. Here's some more job-related ones. I see that you recruit for Japanese English bilingual roles. If you ever need someone with banking experience in Michigan or Ohio, please don't hesitate to let me know. Just to kind of like, hey, I'm out here. Anytime you need something. This is also good because if they go into their emails or their LinkedIn inbox and they put in the search engine banking Michigan, then your name will come up and they'll know, oh yes, I met John at this event here. Maybe now it's time for me to reach out to John. So kind of nice. I just emailed you my application for the bilingual program coordinator and wanted to share my LinkedIn profile too. I believe I would be a good fit because of my language and people skills. This is good because if you send somebody an email, your resume, whether it's to their email address or to an ATS online system, they may or may not put a face to the name. And sometimes they get so many resumes coming in that it's just like, they say 7 seconds per resume or something crazy like that. If you also follow up in LinkedIn, they get a chance to see your profile. And LinkedIn is done in such a way that it's highlighted and it makes it look really cool. And they'll see, you have, wow, like 500 followers and they're in these groups. They must be really involved in the Japan world. So just, I think it's another way to follow up job related wise. So here are some real life examples. And I like this quote from Adam Grant. If we create networks with the sole intention of getting something, we won't succeed. We can't pursue the benefits of networks. The benefits ensue from investments in meaningful activities and relationships over time. Okay. So here's an example. I want to get into blah, blah industry. What would be the best way to get my foot in the door? So networking, regardless of industry, I think it's very helpful. Researching online to see who you find in that world and maybe start following them. Discover related companies that are in that field and start following them on social, sign up if they have any newsletters, depending on the industry, of course, too, but just see who are the key people and just pay attention, just kind of not stalking, but just following them and seeing what they're up to. Global presence. So where are they? Where are they not? You're kind of learning, how wide their reach is. And you're kind of seeing if you're interested in the Japanese thing, see if they have that connection to Japan. Maybe they have a headquarters in Japan. Maybe they have a subsidiary in Japan. Maybe they are just, maybe they have their website in both English and Japanese. So just like take a look and see what their US Japan connection is. And I want you to be creative and think outside the box. I'll mention this over and over, but nothing is impossible. Really, especially now in this day and age, there's so many things that you can do. And I just think nothing is impossible. Here's another example related to animation. I am an animator and about to graduate college. I've been studying Japanese for 3 years as well, so I'm ready to start my life as an artist in Japan. The problem is I don't know where to start, and obtaining the visa is intimidating. Should I start as a teacher or launch myself fully into the art territory? This one is specific to going to Japan from overseas. So again, a lot of times it'll depend on the industry and what you're looking for, but again, nothing is impossible. So in this case, and some of this is already kind of new to you because you've already done Japan, but choice number 1, start as a teacher and network with artists while you're in Japan. And again, apply this to whatever location you want to be in. Choice number 2, more niche, however you say it, than teaching. So will require some research and networking, especially if you want to go to a country where you require visa or relocation and just traveling there. Start digging into this topic online and social. There's so much you can find out online, and Reddit or all these other places that you can go to and put in questions. Quora, I don't really use it. Quora, however you say it. You can go there, ask a question, see who else has responded, maybe take a look at the person who's responded about this expertise and take a look at what they're doing and find them. There's a lot you can learn just by doing some Googling. I was taught that cold calling companies in Japan or Japanese companies in the US is rude. What's the balance between putting yourself out there and cold calling? And this is something that comes up actually quite often when I speak. I wouldn't say that cold calling is necessarily rude, as it isn't done as much, so they may not be as used to it. If we're talking about Japanese companies in the US, keep in mind that it's probably a local person who's handling that, the receptionist or the first phone, so you don't have to worry about a Japanese person actually answering the phone. So can't really answer that too much, might depend on the company. But if you're job searching, I highly recommend checking out their website or their job boards or even their social media. Plus, it'll give you a good idea into their corporate culture to see if you actually like, what they're posting on social media. Relationships, as I mentioned at the beginning of the first half, are key. And it might take longer to kind of network with or get your in at a Japanese company, but focus on networking. And as I start to wrap up here, do you have any recommendations on ways I can network or gain experience if there is nothing Japan related in my area? The internet is your friend. If you're mobile, if you are willing to relocate to a different location, then I say start researching. Like if I wanted to go to Chicago, I'm going to sign up for the Japan American Society. I'm going to follow JETAA Chicago just to see what you guys are up to, even though maybe I'm not JET, but I kind of want to see what's going on. I'm going to research, Japanese companies, maybe visit Mitsuwa and see what's going on there, hang out, get some ramen and see if I can meet people. So there's lots of things you can do. Can you create any opportunities? That is something that's applicable to literally anything. What can you offer? Do you have any advice towards one should do while on JET? And I know we're now after JET, but I'm still going to answer this. If they want to build a career in Japan after the program, being on JET bans you from making money in any other job besides JET while you're in the program. So I'm not sure what opportunities I can find there otherwise. So this is helpful for you as you're sharing with your other fellow JETs who may already be in this situation, and you are probably able to answer this question more than they, so you can help them anyways. But I'm just going to say that as we know, job searching in general takes time. So it's never too early or never too late to start doing research and making connections and just seeing where you want to be. If you are sharing this with your fellow JETs in Japan, just tell them that starting earlier is better. I know that there's the JET, there's an event that you have at the end of the program. I think you travel to Yokohama. Definitely do that. You have to also just, I think networking and researching is going to be your best bet. But let's see what I mentioned here. So networking groups, online or in person, researching and making friends and sharing your dream. If you don't talk about what you want to do or where you want to be, nobody can read your mind. So start sharing and letting people know. So in conclusion, the currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity. Always think, what can you be offering people? That really, really will help you. So networking is not a one-time thing. So if you really are not into it, I kind of want to say, you got to just do it. Sorry. It's just a part of your, on most industries, I think this is very applicable. It's an opportunity to use your Nihongo as well. So at a minimum, maybe you can go to some events and just check out using, your basic Nihongo. Always follow up. Let's not forget that. And it does get easier with practice. So if you want to start with me, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, you can definitely send me a message, do the personalized request, and you can practice networking with me. So again, nothing is impossible. If it doesn't exist, create it and be patient and take action. So, ご清聴ありがとうございました. Again, this is a different QR code just for my company in general, but I'm going to stop sharing my slides. I will send these to Joe afterwards so you can send it.